frequency as a Christopher Nolan film or a book that I read. It doesn't matter for me. It's all about the feel. It's all about the mood that I feel inside. My hometown always influences my work. And with that, I mean, if I don't feel good, if I feel bad, I always go outside. I always find places which can inspire me. And Rotterdam can really provide me that with the different architectures. The people in Rotterdam are super nice. When I have an image to make, first thing I do is first day I just spend on reference searching. I have a folder with hundreds and hundreds of photos, and every photo that I find, I get more defined within the idea itself. I go outside, I take photos. I have probably the hundreds of gigabytes of photos that I can refer to and always use if I need it. So it's very important for me to have a library of visual references that I can always go back to. This is an image that I made for The Last of Us 2. One of the first few things I do is I do extensive research, so finding images that could give me an idea of how a real hospital looks like and how it can influence my work. It's the 80-20% rule. As long as 80% is based on life, the 20% is the twist that I give it myself. If you look at Last of Us, everything in that game is realistic outside of the zombie apocalypse. So that means from 80 to 90%, I can actually refer to real-world situations. If I wanted to see a broken building, I just look up areas where there has been wars or there has been fights so that I can reference the buildings broken up. First thing I do is just flip it, put it right in this position. It's important to notice when you do images like this that you know where your light direction comes from and that the images that you use have no harsh light on them so that you can adjust it yourself when you're photoshopping. I feel like I'm a cinematographer, the director, the cameraman. I am all in one. We just think like directors. How can we make this character pop out more? How do we do that? And that's by adding some more rim lights. That's all I do. I'm designing light. I'm not designing forms. I'm not designing soldiers. I'm not designing anything. For me, lighting is everything because light is the thing that within an image tells the audience, hey, I'm here. Look at me. You have realistic lighting and then you have the artist touch of realistic lighting. A good example I can give is the way Steven Spielberg uses his movies. He always uses dramatic lighting. And with dramatic, I mean fake lights, which enhances the storytelling. I use Photoshop for my final stages of my images. Take an example. This is the first stage of my image. This is the 3D, an empty room. And what's important is I can have a reference of how big the space is so that when I use photos, I can base it off that reference. So, and slowly you build it up towards what we have right now, adding small components, and every small element adds to the story itself. It's very comforting at the end when you look at the complete image and you feel like I finally accomplished something. If I go on Instagram and I see everybody's work, everybody's images, everybody looks beautiful, everybody looks sexy, everybody looks great, everybody's making creative stuff. And I just noticed that from my point, I'm looking from my backseat towards somebody's showreel. They're showing me how great they are. So that's also a learning curve to not compare yourself with others, but to compare yourself with where you were a year ago. Because that way you notice that you will grow. But as soon as you compare yourself to everybody around you, you will start to notice that you aren't growing as somebody else, and you start to punish yourself for that. I do a lot of workshops. I also teach at New Edge. It's a concept art school in Paris. So I try to kind of find a perfect balance between that and hopefully inspire kids who look like me, who also came from refugee families and can feel like, oh, if he can do it, then I can do it as well.
Thank you.
My advice for young ones is to stick with your gut feeling. If you feel like you need to do concept art, then do that. If you feel like you want to do illustration, then do that. It's very hard to ignore the external influences around you, but you just have to ask yourself the question, what do I want? Because at the end of the day, when you become 40 to 50 to 60, whatever, you can't blame anybody for the stuff that you didn't do. But you can always be proud of the stuff that you did do on your own. People ask me the big question, how do you get better? How do you get better at concept art? What is the trick? And there's only one trick. It's most of the people spend more time than you in what they do. That's it. If I could give my younger self one advice, that is, please enjoy it more, because I was too much focused on the end result. I was too much focused on the end of the mountain and not the process towards it. Because the moment I got into Last of Us 2 and I was telling everybody was like, oh, great job, good for you, you know, and that moment stopped after a day or two, and then I actually had to work. I'm still trying to figure out what direction I want, and I still feel like I'm at that point, figuring out what I want, because, you know, every day is a new day.
Wow, excellent content, man. That was incredible. It's also want to give a special shout out to all of the artists who worked on that content. You guys are the real stars. So now I'm going to jump into a few questions, and I'm looking through my Twitter feed here, and I want to start with a question from Bart. And so he asked here, would love for you guys to bring more realistic stitch options to Painter. Digital fashion is hot. So great question, Bart, and perfect timing, because the Substance team, we actually are working on a new stitch filter that we're going to be bringing to a future version of Substance Painter. So here I want to give a special shout out to two of my coworkers, Guillaume Meyer and Lawrence Corine, for creating this filter. So they created a new filter based on Substance Designer, which is actually just a brush and painter. Allows you to paint stitches directly onto your 3D model, and you're able to change all kinds of parameters, vary the stitches, the puncture intensity, work with the seams, and so on. So it's a very powerful tool, and more to come on that. So also, I want to take a look at another question here. This one's coming from Ben Weitzel. And so he's asking here, where do you recommend beginners start with Substance 3D? So I just want to throw out really quickly that we have Substance Academy, which is a free learning site. So you can definitely go there, check out all the courses. Again, another shout out to my coworker, Lawrence, for all the awesome content that he produces for Academy. So I'm going to pause now for a mixology break. Now, I can't believe I get to do this, but one of the great actors of our time, I'm going to announce Stanley Tucci. We already know he's a superstar in film. Stanley's an Academy Award-nominated actor who's appeared in over 90 films, countless television shows, and more than a dozen plays on and off Broadway. In addition to all this, he makes a mean cocktail. Let's watch him break this down with his famous Old Fashioned.
If you could see the light inside.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to make you a cocktail or two today. The first cocktail is going to be an old-fashioned, which is a really great and simple classic cocktail made with bourbon. I am not necessarily a bourbon drinker, but I have to say, I'm a Scotch drinker. But when you find a really good bourbon, this is a good one. Long Branch. I like it just fine. It's really delicious. So I'm gonna take a shot or two. Let's do a shot and a half. A shot and a half of this bourbon right into there, into this beaker filled with ice. Then a little bit of simple syrup, like a teaspoonful, maybe a little more. So simple syrup is just sugar and water in equal measure, heated up in a pan. The sugar dissolves when it gets heated. If you don't heat it, it doesn't dissolve, and then you don't want to drink that. And then a little bit of Angostura bitters, which are in themselves alcoholic. People don't necessarily know that. Just a bit. And you also have like orange bitters, and there are so many different kinds of bitters, but this is the sort of what you would use for a classic cocktail. So then a little stir. I got a little overzealous. And then we're gonna go right into the glass with this, but I have to get some fresh ice. Hold on. Hi, I'm back. So, ice in the glass. And what's actually good, if you can find, sorry about that. If you can find one of those really, you know, those big ice cubes, you know, the big square ice cubes or the big, you know, round ice cubes, those are really great because they melt very slowly and they don't dilute your drink sort of very quickly. I'm gonna pour this over the rocks. It's 3:30 in the afternoon here in London, and I think it's a perfect time for an old fashioned. That was a piece of lemon that just went in there by mistake, which is what I wanted. So lemon twist, a little bit of orange twist, and there's your old fashioned. Cheers. Yeah, I'd say yes to that. So the history of the old fashioned is this. It was made with bourbon. It was also made with a lot of different liquors. And over the years, it became more and more complex. And people used to go in, and this is in the 1800s, mid to late 1800s. People used to go in and say, oh, can I have my drink the old-fashioned way? And that's how the phrase, the term, the name, the moniker, old-fashioned came about. So this is a proper old-fashioned because it is the simplest sort of concoction of this drink. And I felt it was important that you should know that before I have too much of it and then I can't remember the story. All right, I'll see you in a minute.